Hello, this video is on edTPA for special education, and it's focused on Task 3. I'm Muriel Rand from New Pathways to Teaching in New Jersey at New Jersey City University. Let's get started by looking at what you're going to be assessed on for Task 3. There are 5 rubrics. The first one is analyzing the focused learner's performance. The second one is using feedback to guide further learning. The third one is the learner's understanding and use of feedback. The fourth one is explaining the focused learner's use of communication. And the fifth one is using assessment to inform instruction. Let's now look at what you actually have to submit. This first step is to get the materials ready. You're going to need for Part A, a work sample. Part B, completed daily assessment records and baseline data. For Part C, evidence of feedback and the communication skill. And for Part D, the assessment commentary. Now let's go through each of these so that you can see specifically what they're requiring. For Part A, the work samples, you need to have either a written work sample, and there's no page limit if you use that, or you can have a video or audio work sample, and it would be a total of 2 minutes, nothing larger than that. And remember that all the target file size for edTPA are between 300 and 500 megabytes. So again, work samples, you either have a written work sample or a video or audio work sample. Obviously, if your objective was more behavioral, you might need to have a video work sample so that they can see the behaviors. Part B is going to be your completed daily assessment records and baseline data. The baseline data can be in a separate file, but the daily assessment records need to be all in one file. You're going to submit one copy of the completed daily assessment record for each lesson, and you put it in one file. And label each record with the lesson number and list the lesson objective assessed on each daily assessment record. Here's an example that is from the sample submission that we have on the Blackboard shell. You can take a look at this in more depth on Blackboard. But you can see how she created a daily assessment record. It lists the learning goal, and then it lists the objective for each of the lessons. This only shows the first 2. And the 3 things that she was assessing, and then some notes on it, and whether the candidate met whether the learner met the objective or not. So that's an example of a daily assessment record. And you would put each of those into one file. Again, label them for lesson 1, 2, 3, etc. Part C is the evidence of feedback and communication skill. You need one file that shows the feedback that you gave your learner. This can be written on the work sample, or it could be written on a different work sample than you submitted in Part A. So it can be the same as the one you submitted in Part A, or it can be different. It could also be an audio or video clip of no more than 3 minutes if you gave the feedback back verbally to your learner. And this can be a different video clip than what you used in Task 2. Then you also need one file with the evidence of the use of communication skills. So you need to capture how your learner used the communication skill. Again, this can be a written work sample if your communication skill was a writing skill, or it will need to be a video of no more than 5 minutes if it was an oral communication skill. And again, it can be a different video than the first part of Part C, and it can be a different video than you used in Task 2, or a different video from Part A. Part D is the assessment commentary. This commentary is just like the other ones. You're going to use the template provided, downloaded. It's a Word template. You're going to have no more than 8 pages, but I encourage you to use all the room given to you. So get as close as you can to the full 8 pages. Okay, let's talk now about how you're going to actually write the commentary. Again, use the full 8 pages. Make sure that you answer each part of each question fully. Remember that sometimes, even though it has one bullet, even within one bullet, there's multiple questions. Give examples from your files. So that's from Part A, B, and C. You're going to use those as your evidence. And if you're using video evidence, make sure that you give timestamps for your evidence, just like you did in Task 2. The first question in the commentary is analyzing the focused learner's performance. They're going to ask you to identify the lesson objectives and to describe any changes from your planned assessments. So, if you changed anything during the lesson, just describe in this question how you did that. And then you're going to summarize the data. I highly recommend you use a chart if at all possible, because it makes it easier for the scorer to see your data. And then you're going to analyze the focused learner's performance and describe the strengths, the needs that still remain, and the supports. What ones were used, what ones, and then in the next question, you're going to explain whether the supports worked or did not work. Did they or did they not impact learning? So again, read the questions carefully. In question 2, this is feedback to guide further learning. You're going to identify how you submitted the feedback, just whether it's written on work samples or whether it's a video or an audio. Explain how your feedback addressed the strengths and needs of your learner. So again, good feedback is glows and grows. What are the strengths and what does the learner need to do? If the learner met your objective, then your feedback should be what they need to work on next, right? So there's always something else that they could do next. And then the next question is to explain what you did to help the learner understand the feedback, and explain how the learner used or will use the feedback in subsequent learning tasks. I want to make this point clear that this feedback question counts for 2 rubrics. So it's 2/5 of your task 3 score. So it's really important. There's one rubric that is just on how well you gave feedback. And then the second rubric is on how well you helped the learner to understand the feedback and use it. So remember that. This if you're going to put more time into one area, it should be this question. Number 3 is the evidence of the communication skill. So explain the learner's use of the communication skill during the lesson, describe how they used it, and then explain how the planned support for the communication skill built on strengths and addressed needs. If you'll remember in task 1, they asked you how you were going to support the communication skills, and you had to describe the planned supports you were going to use. So now you're going to make sure this matches what you said in task 1. How did that build on the learner's strengths, and how did it build on the learner's needs? Again, you can go back to task 1 because you already wrote about this in task 1. They just want to be reminded. And then the third part is to describe how the planned supports helped your learner generalize or maintain the communication skill. So how did you help them to be able to learn this well enough that they can use this communication skill in another lesson, another setting, with another teacher, etc. So how did you get them to generalize or maintain the communication skill? And then the fourth question is using assessment to inform instruction. So based on the analysis of the data, what are your next steps for instruction? Be very specific in 2 ways. Base your next steps on the data. Make sure that you're referring back to the data, and be very specific. So in other words, really outline another lesson plan here. What would be the next lesson you would teach, and how would you do it based on your analysis of the data? And then finally, connect your next steps to research and or theory. So you want to have a couple of citations here, and remember that the references go at the end of the commentary and don't count in the page limit. So that's it for the task 3. Again, general tips: review the handbook carefully. It's still your responsibility to make sure that you are meeting all the criteria of the handbook. Even though I will review your work and give you feedback, I can't review it with the same intensity and detail that you would, because it's your work. So review the criteria for level 3 and level 4 in the rubrics. The rubrics are in your handbook. Look at that really carefully. Have I met level 3 and level 4 for each of those 5 rubrics? And while you're writing, think about what the scorer is looking for. because if you can make it easier for them to find what they're looking for, and of course that comes from the rubric, then it's more easy for them to score you, and you're more likely to get a good score. So I hope this will be helpful. Good luck on task 3. I think you'll do really well if you follow these guidelines.